So Nick, 30 years ago, I think it is, I remember you and I sat in a valley in Devon that was going to be a reservoir, and we were interviewing Mick. You were there with a video camera on a tripod, and that was the beginning of Timesigns, which is the documentary series that led to Time Team. And do you have any memories of those moments back in that time?
Well, I'm not too sure how I got involved, how we originally got involved. It may have been, I know you had some other cameramen. I think there were 4 listed on the credits for that. So I assume one of those guys recommended me, as they couldn't do the day you wanted to do. That often happens with freelance. You know, we just did what we could. We met, and you know, it led to great things, being Time Team. But yeah, the day turning up, I remember it was quite a good day, and I think we interviewed Mick, so that was my first taste of Mick as well. And again, a very important person who would I would get to know very, very well, and such a lovely guy. And so fond memories of that. I think we had a good day. I must admit, apart from that, and obviously then we did, I'm not sure how many days I did in the end, but I mean, I re-watched it the other day, and I remember doing the stuff with Phil. So, you know, working with those 2 major Time Team characters was, obviously I didn't know at the time where this was going, but, you know, it was soon obvious a year or so afterwards that, you know, that was the Timesigns was the well, not a pilot for Time Team, but certain established some characters that would.
And did you shoot that sequence when we had Phil with his axe chopping a tree?
Yeah, it was quite scary, because we wanted to get some low angle shots of the axe coming towards the camera. So yes, I mean, that was, I'm not sure whether I chickened out, locked off the camera and walked away or not, but there was certainly a lot of wood chips flying around, I remember.
It was a nice moment when the axe head actually fell out of the axe.
Yes.
And you and I had to sit around for about half an hour while Phil soaked his axe in a stream so that the woods swelled up in order to hold the axe head before we could proceed. And I remember sitting there for 30 minutes thinking, God, I'm paying for all this camera time, and here we are staring at the butterflies, one thing and another.
Well, you knew how much these cameramen charge with their equipment. But
extraordinary amount. And of course, the amazing thing about Timesigns was that we had both film and video.
Yes.
We had an Ari, Bernard Hedges, wonderful cameraman, filming. When you look at it back, can you see the difference between the video and the film material?
Funny enough, I can. That's why I'd forgotten when we spoke earlier that actually it had been shot on film and video, and I could tell the difference actually. I mean, I have to say, though, I came along and shot video as such, the film had a beautiful quality about it, especially with the light. And of course, in those days, it was very hard with the sunlight with video, because it didn't have a contrast range. Film still had that softness to take in the sunlight. And I remember in the early days of video, we used to shoot a lot of exteriors. Say if it was a drama or something, or documentary, which was mainly exterior, we'd shoot on film, because video couldn't handle, you know, the sunlight. But I think by the time Timesigns came along, the technology was better for video. But yeah, I could see the difference, absolutely. But I mean, we did shoot a lot, and funny enough, again, this linked a lot into my memories of Time Team as well, and the similarities. Those lovely shots we shot into the light with the arrowheads and things with the sun coming through, which was very much which we did a lot on Time Team as well. So again, I could see the visual references, and to the start of that to what we did, which I'm sure without doubt is your influence, of course, with the backlight.
I remember Mick used to say, when you and I were setting up those shots, because I quite like those light effects.
Yes.
Mick would always say, oh, Tim and Nick are being artistic again. And it was always a nice moment. The thing I loved about those journeys up and down the valley is that often Phil and Nick and the other archaeologists will be helping us with boxes and all the
Yes.
rest of it. And because, you know, we didn't have a large crew, it'd be you, a couple of sound guys, and people helping, and it was like a little sort of family unit, really. Subsequently, you went on to shoot approximately how many time teams?
Getting on for 30.
Certainly, I think one of the lovely things for me working with you was that ability that you had to be there with the camera, so we didn't have to have multiple cuts and edits in a scene. And where did that style of shooting come from for you? Had you learnt it? Had you looked at other people's styles? Who had influenced you to shoot like that?
Well, I mean, I think the first cameraman I worked with, BBC, was very much from a sort of fly on the wall background. So I sort of learnt a little bit from him. But I did work with the director on sort of regional TV shows, which we'd shoot on a very low budget. We shoot on a reversal film, which is like a sort of 35mm slide film, if you like. And you had to be very precise with the exposure and everything with that, because it's very critical. But, you know, we used to do these shows with very little money. But what this guy did, and he was a great teacher, actually, because he'd made quite a lot of these observational films. And he just said, you know, just think, just stop and think, listen was the main thing. He said, just listen to what's being said, because, and let's only shoot when something's happening. You know, sometimes we go on a week's shoot with this guy and we wouldn't shoot anything for 2 or 3 days and said, oh, there's nothing much happening with these people, let's go down to the pub. So we'd, you know, so great, a few hours in the pub, and then we go home, and then the next day we'd come back, and then suddenly things would take off. You know, there's an instant, say you went to somebody's house, or we did a series on Glastonbury Festival, which same sort of thing. We'd have days where nothing happened, then suddenly on one day you'd have Michael Eavis and doing something or other that was exciting. So you could shoot a whole episode in a day, really, though you had the 5 days. So you didn't need to shoot. I think today with video, people tend to, just because it's cheap, just shoot it anyway. But if nothing's happening, or the contributors aren't doing anything of interest, what's the point? So I think it was just to stop and think, listen when you're shooting, I think. Just listen to what's being said, and don't panic, don't just pan the camera everywhere. You know, it was listen. So once you've got the technical aspects of the exposure and focus out of the way, which is something you learn and you make mistakes, once you've got that, it's like riding a bike. You then just concentrate on the subject. But I mean, you know, as a cameraman, you are the audience. So you're thinking, what do they want to see, or what they want to hear? That was a great thing about Tony on Time Team. You know, he'd say to the contributors when they started to get into their gobbledygook technical language, look, sorry guys, what does this mean? You know, bring it down to earth. How
would you contrast? Because it seemed to me, as we got larger and larger crews on Time Teams, so it was like in a few of the final series, there were 75 people on site, unbelievably, archaeologists, crews, and everybody, 3 crews. All the crews would be shooting what was, the word used was coverage. And we would take a fairly straightforward scene and shoot it from every possible angle, which, of course, from the editing point of view, back in London 6 months later or whenever, the person knew that they'd got shots from every possible angle to give them coverage on a scene. But it struck me that you lose something by doing that. You lose what I perceive as a kind of flow. Do you see that difference between those two?
Oh yes, I mean, it's a spontaneity. You know, you want to get that spontaneity as soon as you can, because people, if you keep, same with actors, if you keep on and on, they go off the boil eventually and sort of give in a little bit. I mean, I never knew how Kubrick got away with it, you know, often doing 100 takes. Well, you know, that's just wearing people completely out, whether that was his way of doing it. But generally, you know, people that usually people you shoot, you just want to get very quickly. You know, they don't want to, they're saying it for the first time. They don't particularly want to keep repeating it, and it will get worse and worse. Often is the case, I think. Also, you don't really want to cheat the audience. You know, I think it's a bit cheating the audience if you're cutting away and you're, you know, and that's what I used to tend to do. Was I do is with listening, you're using all those. Don't need to cut away, because if somebody's talking about a piece of pottery or whatever, the camera, you know, the audience, I want to see that. So you go and see it, and you see it being demonstrated. You come back up, somebody else chats. So you follow the conversation completely spontaneously. I mean, it's quite instinct. I mean, I think I do have an instinctive way of working in that respect. But, you know, like I said to you, it's what the audience would want to do. If you're saying, I've got this item here, well, I want to see it. So I go and show it. So it's just listening. That's all. It's just being engaged. It's being engaged with what's happening. And I think for the audience, it's more real. I think the audience know these days when they're being cheated. And I think if something is spontaneous, then I think it feels more real.